Okay, I'll have a look at October 2012, question 1. 22:20 hours, 16th of April. Our vessel steering 030 compass, Cape Campbell Light, board 334 compass at 7.9 miles. Variation 23 degrees east. Find the position of the vessel. The first important thing to consider here, of course, we obtain our compass error using the vessel's course of 030 compass. Once we've got the compass error, we apply it to the bearing and then we can plot the bearing and get our position. So remember, you can only get your compass error using the ship's head. So we started off 030 compass, we went to the deviation curve and we went along to the compass heading at 030 across, and that gave us our deviation of 1 degrees west. Apply the variation. 052 degrees true is the course. Give us a compass error of 22 degrees east, 23 east and 1 west gives 22 east. Apply that to the bearing and that gives us 356 degrees true bearing. So we can run the bearing as I've done in this position here. We've run the bearing and the distance, and that gives us our position at the time indicated, which was 22:20 hours. So that's where we are at 22:20. So that's the first part answered. The vessel is inward bound to Wellington Harbour and is programmed to embark the pilot at 0200 hours on the 17th of April. The master instructs the OOW to make good a track to be in a position with Wellington Harbour leading lights in line and Turrecurie Head bearing due east at 0120 hours at 1700. Find the compass course to steer and the ship speed required to comply with the master's instructions, assuming a tidal stream and at 3 degrees leeway. First thing to notice here, the vessel is inward bound to Wellington, is programmed to embark the pilot at 0200. However, the master wishes us to be in a position at 0120 hours. So the 0200 hours doesn't come into this problem. It's the 0120 hours that we are considered with. Okay, so don't get mixed up with between the two times. So our total steaming time is going to be 3 hours, 22:20 to 0120. So with this sort of problem, you plot the leading lights up near Wellington Harbour, run across from Turrecurie Head across to find the position that the master wishes you to be at 0120 hours. Is it 0120? Yeah, 0120 hours. So at this position here, we need to be there at 0120 hours. So what you do, you run from your position at 22:20, you run the course you've got to make good to the 0120 position here. You then, at the 22:20 fix, you run 3 hours of current, 3 hours worth, which is 338 degrees at 4.2, because it's 1.4 per hour, and then you join the triangle, and of course then this course here with the 1 hour, that's the course that the water track that you're going to have. That, in other words, that's what the helmsman is going to steer before we apply the leeway, of course. So we've got that course off the chart, the course to counteract, and it's 050 degrees true. We've got a southerly wind of 3 degrees, so this southerly wind is coming from here. It always comes from the south, and so we have to steer into the wind to counteract it. So the course we need to steer is 053 degrees true. The actual distance that we're going to cover is from where you've plotted the end of the current to our destination 0120. Measure that total distance, which comes to 33.1 miles, divided by the 3 hours, and therefore we'll have to go at 11.03 knots to arrive there at the time of 0120 hours. So it's 0053 true at 11.03 knots. Now we need to convert the true back to compass. So obviously apply your variation first, get your magnetic of 030. Then what you'd need to do in this instance, you'd need to go to your curve and use compass heading, for example, of 030, 040. Well, in this instance, I've used 020. I've looked at 020 compass and I get 0 deviation. 040 compass, deviation of 2.4 west. So that gives me two magnetic values, 020 and 037.6. The one we have here is 030. So I then interpolate slightly to find out what my deviation is going to be, and I find it's 1.4 west. So I've got variation 23 east, giving me magnetic of 030, deviation 1.4 west. Therefore, it's 03 1.4 degrees compass that I would have to steer. So that's the compass course. Part 2 there, the compass bearing when Cape Campbell Light is abeam. Well, the compass bearing is simply 90 degrees to your compass course. So here's Cape Campbell here, and it's going to, of course, a beam bearing is always a beam to whatever the helmsman is steering. So we worked out that our helmsman is steering 03 1.4 compass, so that would be 03 1.4 there. 90 degrees to that there, just to make sure you get the right way around, will give us a beam bearing of 301.4 degrees. And the last part asks us for the speed to make good. Okay, so that was the speed required, but the speed we actually have to make good is from 2220 to 0120. In other words, the first course that we put on the chart, the course made good, the speed that we have to make good is that whole distance divided by 3, and that's 34.3 miles divided by 3 hours. So the speed to make good is 11.4 knots. Okay, we'll actually go at 11.03 knots to get there in the right time, but because the current's pushing us, we'll actually be making good 11.4 knots. So that's how you would answer that particular question.